Now let's go on to if, else, and else if statements. You may remember having done this in JavaScript, so hopefully this is just a little bit of revision for you. The syntax is slightly different, but the effects are just the same. So we want to say essentially, let's use an example of, let's say we worked at a nuclear power plant and we wanted to make sure the temperature didn't go over, oh, I have no idea with temperatures. Let's say we didn't want it to go over 40 degrees, okay? And if it does, then we need to make some kind of alert and say it's too hot. Otherwise, we just want it to say everything's fine. So we're creating a program that checks the temperature of a nuclear reactor core. So I'm just going to write that in the top here because it sounds cool. So program for checking temperature of a nuclear power core. Power station core? Let's go for that. Anyway, that isn't too important. So then I'm just going to create a new cell underneath by pressing B. So what I want to do, let's say max temperature, we're just going to call it max temp equals, like, let's just say 40, yeah? So now we want to have some way of saying if the temperature is over 40, then we need to give some kind of alert, else we just say everything's fine. So let's also create a variable called current temp, and we're just going to call it 20, well, let's say it's really hot. So there's something to be worried about. So we want to write if. So we start off by writing if, and then we put in our condition. So we want if the current temperature is more than the max temp. So that's our condition. And in JavaScript, we had to put these in brackets, but in Python, we don't need to do that. We just leave it. So we're saying if the current temp is more than the max temp. So that's our condition. So it's going to return a Boolean, right? So either it's true or false. So if this is true, that the current temperature is more than the max temperature, we put a colon, and then we press enter, and you can see that this line has been indented. So it's not starting from back here, it's indented, and that's really important in Python. So when you have a colon, and you want to execute some code underneath, it needs to be indented. So then we're just going to print core temperature above safe levels. Everyone panic, because this is a really helpful program. So that's what happens if the current temperature is above the max temperature. But otherwise, so basically else, so we're saying if not, so we're saying if the current temperature isn't more than the max temperature, well then that's fine. So we can just print, and I press enter, you can see it's already indented nicely. Print everything is fine. So when I run this now, you will see core temperature above safe levels, everyone panic. That's because the current temperature is more than the max temperature. So let's say the current temperature is 20, so everything's fine. There we go. Apart from a typo, everything is fine because now the current temperature isn't more than the max temperature, so we go straight to the else. So that's all looking good. But what if we want to add another condition to this? We want to say, okay, that's fine, but also if it gets too cold, then it won't be efficient. So let's say we want to have something happen if the current temperature is less than a minimum temperature. So let's add another variable called min temp. We'll call it 10. So this is where we want to start using else if. So we don't want it to be indented, we just put else if. So this is us saying basically if this happens, then do this, or if this happens, and then we can add another one even, or if this happens, add as many as we want, and then finally we finish with the else, saying if none of these happen, none of the ifs or else ifs happen, then just do something. For example, print everything is fine. So for our second condition, we want to say if the current temp is less than the minimum temp. Then we put colon. Oops, sorry, my mistake. We have that on the same line, like this. So we have our condition, else if the current temperature is less than the minimum temperature. Then we indent here to say what what code we want to execute. We're going to print, let's see, temperature levels low. Please make a fire. That makes sense, right? Okay, so it's saying invalid syntax. So I think what we need to do is have that as 1. So I've still got my head in JavaScript. So in Python, it's just elif, which is nice. So it's shorthand for else if. So elif, the current temperature is less than the minute temperature. Everything is fine. Okay, so let's make it so that the current temperature is less than 10. Put it as 8. Temperature level is low. Please make a fire. Okay, so in this lecture, essentially, we've gone over, and hopefully it's just revisiting, if you've done the JavaScript already, how we can use if, else, and else if, or how we call it in Python, elif. So essentially we write if to start with, and then our condition. So condition here is that the current temperature is more than the max temp. We could do something like is more than or equal to, or we could do equal to, or not equal to, anything like that. We can use, any of the operators basically. So we say if the current temperature is more than the max temperature, then print this. Elif, or else if, the current temperature is less than the minute temperature. So now we're providing a second condition, and then we put a colon and an indentation, which is about 4 spaces in. It's automatically done in most text editors, as long as it knows that it's a Python file it's working with. Then we say whatever code that we want to execute. So we could put in more if we wanted. We could add in as much stuff as we want. We could even add in another if statement in there, which is called a nested if statement. So if neither of these conditions have been met, and even if we've added more elif conditions, no matter how many of them there are, if none of these have been met, then we have one final statement to say, well, if none of those have been met, then just do this. So essentially we've gone over if, elif, and else. So what I recommend that you do is have a go at this yourself. Also, see if you can do something interesting, like not only having if this is more than this, but you could also add an or an and. So you might remember we went over these before, so we could say if the current temperature is more than the max temperature, or the current temperature is less than the min temperature. For example, have a think about how you can play around with these things to expand on the if, elif, and else statements, and see also what will be really, really helpful for you is to think about a different application. So ignore this one about the nuclear power station, think about another one that you think could be useful in the real world, and that really does help to improve your skills in using if, elif, and else. So have a go at that, and I'll see you in the next lecture.